Max Verstappen wins the Japanese Grand Prix after a McLaren strategy fumble. This is Shifting Happens. Hello, everybody. How are we all doing? And welcome back to Shifting Happens. We are here to talk all things Japanese Grand Prix, where Max Verstappen won and McLaren had a strategy fumble. And I'd like to thank everybody for tuning into this episode, because that's basically all that. We'll chat all about it. I'd like to say I'm joined by Marshall, Shez, and Rory, and working as diligently as always behind the scenes, we have Fly. And we do believe AJ is on his way in as well. So for the first time in a long time, we might have a full roster for you today. We're all here to talk about this race because it was just so thrilling and riveting. But we are going to talk about our race winner, Max Verstappen. Basically, I feel did most of the legwork yesterday with one of the all-time great qualifying laps. I think I want to spend more time talking about that than talking about the race, because that qualifying lap was from the gods, and he has a habit of doing that in Suzuka, but this was just next level. He was nowhere in Q1, nowhere in Q2, and then just finds something in Q3 that only a rare handful of drivers could have found in that moment. And yeah, it was an extraordinary performance. Shez, going to come to you first. Your thoughts on Max's pole lap and just that performance by him?
Well, first of all, I'm super excited to potentially see AJ's face for the first time in a long time. That'd be awesome. Mate, that lap was something else, wasn't it? It was good fun to watch. Good fun when F1 do their little ghost cam as well. That was super fun. I don't know why they haven't been doing that for the last season or two. But there was something very do or die about Max's lap. He was very uncharacteristically aggressive into a heap of the corners, and there was a lot of using the strengths of his car and his ability to deal with that loose rear end, especially in a car that had no rear wing, to be able to create enough of a gap in certain corners and certain sectors that meant that Lando could never quite catch up, despite being able to deploy some of the advantage of that McLaren in the sectors where he could. Best example of that, sector 1, actually, I thought, when he barrels into turn 1 and 2, miles quicker than Lando does, but his minimum speed heading into turn 2 and up the S's was actually a little bit slower than Lando's. But the delta between them, like the amount of gap that Max had built up with his aggression down the pit straight into the first couple of corners, meant that Lando never, even though he aced the S's, never quite got back down to his level. And it just afforded Max that opportunity for that magic at the end of the lap. That last corner was something else. Like, seriously, he braked much later than I would have thought he normally would have. He managed to get the car rotated, just beautifully four-wheel drifted it into the apex, and then just blasted it out of there. It was such a good corner. Like that is where the magic happened. Everything that led up to it allowed him the opportunity to do what he did in that final corner. That's the magic. But yeah, unbelievable. What a great lap. What a great driver.
Absolutely. People that know me know I'm not Max's biggest fan outside of the car. But inside of the car, there is no doubting his brilliance. I mean, Rory, would you say that this was probably one of his best pole laps? For me, I think this surpasses Monaco 23. I think this is definitely his best.
It surpasses one. I think it's up there. Monaco 23, like Monaco 23, his final. We know he was 2/10 down when he came, or 3/10 down and came back and just pipped it. But I think this one, because he didn't set a purple sector in his whole lap, it was Norris it was Norris the first one, then Piastri in the two final ones. But yeah, I think watching it, I remember just watching it. It was just, we saw Piastri come across the line, Lando come across the line, and he goes fast, and then McLaren celebrate, and then you see the timing come of Max just like being like, what was it, nearly like 21 milliseconds or whatever, and it was just Max goes across the line, and then you're just seeing Piastri's purple timing going up, and it's like, Piastri's probably going to pit Max here, and then he doesn't, and it's like Max is like that. You know, it's a good lap when Max Verstappen shows emotion, because every time when Max really shows emotion since this new regulation set, because he was getting poles so many, like he's on his 41st pole. But yeah, I think it was one of his best laps, and I think, like you said, Baxty at the start, I kind of want to talk more about that qualifying session than the race, but it's still Max's performance in the race showed him why. We'll get on to show why he's still one of the best drivers, and he's best driver on the grid at the moment.
Yeah, Marshall, just your thoughts on the lap, and
Wow. The breaking into the final chicane was incredible. I think he gained most of his time just going into that final braking zone. Like when they did that ghost car thing that they're doing now, you just see like, Lando's quite far ahead, and he just like, it's like a video game. I mean, that's what the graphic looks like, but it was very, very, very impressive. And like, you could even tell, I think, like, I was watching it back, because I did not stay up to watch either qualifying or the race. I slept and had a good night's sleep, and then watched it as soon as I woke up, which is how I recommend everybody consume these midnight races. But anyway, when I was watching it, I was like, this breaking into the final chicane, like, you can tell he's just later on the brakes and just kind of sends it, and it sticks for him. It's like, and you were seeing people kind of losing the tires or losing their, losing traction going into that, and he just sent it. And yeah, wow, like, what a lap. What a weekend. Like, I mean, I know McLaren has the advantage, but it just proves you can never, ever, ever count out Max Verstappen. Like, he's not going away. As much as people thought that with Newey gone and with Red Bull in shambles that, he wouldn't be a factor this year. But look, now he's 1 point off the championship lead after 3 races. Now we'll see if they can keep McLaren in their sights. But does anybody think that car is a match for McLaren, and they're 1 point down after 3? It's quite impressive, and especially since all of his points are all of Red Bull's points.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, Yuki having a steady first weekend, but not great, and then obviously kind of got caught up in the whole. I mean, there was some setup differences. He had a much bigger rear wing than Max had, and which Jacques Villeneuve was very keen to tell us on commentary. And then, he just obviously got caught in DRS trains, and just because nobody overtook anybody in this race. AJ, first of all, welcome. I hope you're well. With your thoughts on Max's pole up?
Why are we still here?
Phenomenal.
Just
That
suffer
lap was just absolutely. Oh
every
my
night.
God. Oh, that was painful. That was painful. Oh my God.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that, and we'll
Oh
probably
my
bring that
God.
video back out. But yeah.
Oh, but it's fine. It's fine. I mean, it's not that bad. It's not as bad as people make it out to be. It's fine. Max pole lap was honestly phenomenal. I mean, what else can I say that Marshall hasn't already said? Like, you just can't count him out. Like, for the life of me, everyone here knows I'm not a fan of Red Bull by any means, nor will I ever support that team. But Max is outstanding. Like, it's what he did in pole and the way he managed his race today. It was all really, really well done. Um, that graphics that you guys were talking about, I watched that multiple times. I actually sat and watched that multiple times because of how close it was between him and Lando. It was insane. Um, However, I will say though, props to Yuki. I'm not going to downplay his weekend. Yes, he didn't do anything outstanding, but nothing outstanding really happened this race. It was a good, tidy race. And at the same time, I mean, it's his first weekend in the Red Bull, and clearly he's doing something right. He is handling it better than Liam was able to, uh, clearly, and also performing so far better than what Checo did at some point last season. So, maybe Yuki was the answer all along.
I will say that Checo was on the podium at this very race last year, so not gonna can't have that one. I do want to
towards the end.
Towards the end, yes, I'll take that. But this race last year, Checo was a Red Bull one too, I think. So I do want to just say one thing though about the lap, that this trend that's started to annoy me on social media, where people are like, "Oh, qualifying on pole in the third fastest car isn't for everyone." Need I take you back to Turkey 2020 when in the third fastest car, Lance Stroll qualified on pole? So just park that one, okay? Because yes, it is for everyone if Lance Stroll can do it.
Charles did it multiple times.
And Lewis did it multiple times. Like it's all Verstappen fanboys just
Verstappen's done it as well. He's done it as well. He did it
but before this reg set,
That's the thing. Like getting pole in what's not the fastest car is nothing new. It's been done before. It's been done plenty of times, and it will still keep being done.
Yeah, it is what it is. It was just like only Verstappen and Alonso were being mentioned in that breath, and I'm just like, come on.
Max Verstappen taking pole in a Red Bull is nothing compared to Nick Latifi making Q3 at Silverstone 22 in a Williams. So let's just give the GOAT some credit.
Absolutely.
Are we going to forget about Kevin Magnussen at Interlagos?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, true.
Nico Hulkenberg at Interlagos?
Yeah, that's true.
That's true. Yeah,
it's all good stuff. All good stuff. Okay, let's have a quick talk about the race, and we'll talk about Max first in the race, because I actually thought he drove exemplary. Like he just made zero mistakes. The only mistake that he made wasn't a mistake by him; it was Red Bull giving him a slow pit stop. Yeah, and that's what led to the whole pit lane thing. But he didn't put a foot wrong.
How dare he make Lando drive off the road, though? How dare he?
It's always Red Bull's fault. It's always Red Bull's fault.
It's not always Red Bull's fault. It's always George Russell's fault.
No. I'm changing it to Red Bull now.
Wait, who's George Russell?
I think we mean Kimi Antonelli. Who is Kimi Antonelli as well?
But yeah, I mean, Rory, speaking of Max's race, he just, I mean, in that last stint, he just always seemed to find a 10th in Sector 1. When you just think Lando's just getting, you think, okay, is this the moment for Lando? Max just always just had enough to stay ahead, didn't he?
He also, I think, did Lando ever get into Max's DRS during the race? I think it was like, maybe it was one or twice, but most of it, Max was like, maybe it was 1.2 seconds ahead of Lando. He never let it get underneath a second, maybe in the pit stop intersection, but it was definitely maybe once or twice it happened, I can remember. But I think it was, like you said, BaxtyB, it was an amazing drive. It was measured as well. He definitely was pushing at 100%, but it was just measured in how he did it. We'll talk about McLaren, how that went, but I think for Red Bull and Max, you can't count out Max Verstappen when he wasn't comfortable in that car, because he had mentioned in qualifying as well, like he crashed 6 times due to the understeer in that car, and it's just, I think it's one of his not best drives, but like one of his most measured drives in his career, I think. But like I said, I think with your, like when you made the point, I think it was in the last few laps when we thought the McLarens were closing. Like, I think Lando got to 1.1 seconds behind Max, and then Max out some just pulled 4/10 on him in the second sector. Like, it was just
yeah. Shez, how did you think of Max's drive real time, like as you're watching it and seeing the McLarens not do anything behind?
Oh, flashbacks to 2023, man. That was a pretty dull race. I'm not gonna lie. I'm glad Lando got pushed onto the grass, because otherwise, one Red Bull wouldn't have been enough, I don't think, for that race. But it was, I mean, Max was pretty awesome, wasn't he? Like, it's difficult to sort of convey that, because if somebody who doesn't follow Formula One and you sat them down and said, all right, let's watch this race, right? It's going to be freaking brilliant. Like, there's cars that can follow, and we're on, the best driver's circuit on the calendar. Let's watch this race. And then you saw Max Verstappen sort of sod off into the distance, well, not quite into the distance, but measured always at the front. They'd be like, what is this? There's no passing. This guy's clearly got the quickest car, and it's that context of knowing what that drive means in that machine that makes you sort of appreciate sort of just how good that drive was. Remember that he wasn't able to change his setup from qualifying to the race, so he still had like nothing on the rear axle, and yet he was able to keep his tires in. Never really got to the point where somebody was going to undercut him. That was never really a problem for him. And there were some sort of benefits that he had, right? Number one, the usual caveat that clean air is king, and he was always pretty much at the front of the pack. But also the fact that they'd resurfaced the track this year meant that it was a bit kinder to the tyres. And for some reason, Pirelli had just brought the same tyre and just labelled them slightly differently. So there was no degradation across the range of compounds either. So, he had some advantage from that, but he still had to drive the RB21, which, as you guys say, Yuki couldn't get higher than one position in the end, was it? Maybe 2 positions. He got 12th.
He gained 2 positions,
yeah, from his starting position. So, yeah, I mean, I still think qualifying was the main event, but the race was pretty special, yeah.
Okay, Marshall, let's talk McLaren, shall we? How hard did they fumble their strategy? Because they did have the fastest car, and yet they did nothing with it.
Well, they fumbled their qualifying. That's really the main thing. But then they were just far too conservative in the race. And I actually think my driver of the day is the guy on the wall behind me here, Jacques Villeneuve, because he was dropping some truth bombs on the Sky broadcast. Being a big Jacques Villeneuve fan, I know he's not everyone's cup of tea, and I know that he tends to shoot his mouth off and say some pretty ridiculous things. And he even used to do that when he was racing. So you kind of have to take the outrageous statements and self-righteousness with Villeneuve. It's kind of part of the package. But I think that he did an excellent job on the broadcast. And I saw some people on social media complaining, and it's like, I don't know if it's because he's a little too blunt and people don't like him not sort of blowing smoke up people's, and saying, what people want to hear about, praising everyone. And he tends to be a bit more dry and a bit more kind of not, critical of everyone, as opposed to, in awe, which is kind of what Sky tries to promote. I think that he's very dry and truthful in his sort of assessment. And when McLaren had that pit moment, he's like, well, it might not have worked out, but we saw George Russell came out and was not able to make the undercut work. So if you have pace in that car and you can get clear air, why don't you stay out a couple more laps with Lando, try to build up enough of a gap with that clear air, and then if it goes absolutely the worst way possible, the worst that can happen is you're third behind your teammate and you still have a 2-3, or you win the race because you're able to gain that couple of seconds on Verstappen. So when you see Max pitting, why are you following him when you've already tried the undercut with Piastri? So you know that that's not going to work because he's already pitted the lap before. So why don't you split your strategies to try and make something happen? And I always say this, and I think that like the conservative strategy in Formula One is always like preserving the track position you have rather than trying to go for something that might advantage you. And I think that McLaren in this race and Mercedes, when they were the dominant team, are kind of in the same sort of strategy mold where they'd never take that brave play. They always try and do the conservative thing where they're trying to, manage the track position or manage their chances and not go for it when, bravery would be risky. And, we want to see people try and win races. And I think that it was worth the try. I think that it was worth the punt at staying out a couple laps longer. Would it have worked? I mean, we don't know. But at least, unleash. And the big unknown is we don't know what kind of pace Lando could do in clear air. We can only assume it was faster, but would it have been sufficiently faster than Max on fresh tires for 2 laps? Like, we don't know. But, at least give it a try, because what have you got to lose, right? If you want to win the race, if you want to rack up these wins at the beginning of the season, you have nothing but time to make it up. So go for the wins now that are on the table. Like if this is the last race and you're just trying to conserve your title position, fine, but you have so much time left in the season. Why are you so conservative on your strategy that you won't even split your 2 cars and try something different? It's just strange to me.
I honestly agree with you. I think that McLaren should have at least rolled the dice. I think if it doesn't work and they go for a 2-3, then they can switch the cars. Just say, right, yeah, okay, that didn't work. Revert the cars back, Lando, Oscar. That they could probably.
Gee, it's not like they've never done that before.
I know, right?
And look how that turned out.
Oh yeah. AJ, I know you've got something you want to say about the strategy plays.
Yeah, no, so this is something that I feel we mentioned last year as well, regarding McLaren and their strategies. If anything, I feel like that is their weakest part of the team right now. The strategy and the third. Well, because they've got a phenomenal car, but evidently last year and this year, they've not really learned anything in terms of calls that they're making from the pit wall. It's the same blend, the way Marshall was saying it, conservative nonsense. How do you expect to go on and retain your title if you keep, or not just retain, but push for the drivers' championship, staying in that type of car? Like for me personally, I would rather the chaos and risk in Ferrari's strategies than this drab, dull nonsense that McLaren do in everything. Like I would take Ferrari race strategies over this because at least Ferrari takes risks. The risk may not work out. It may be painful for the fans, sure. But look, you're going to take a punt, you may as well take a punt. It's early enough in the season for you to be taking punts. If you're not going to risk it, you're not going to win big. It is what it is.
I actually think that people in the midfield are guilty of this too, because we always hear like, oh, we can't do this, we'll lose track position. It's like you're P13, bud. What are you preserving here? You're preserving your pristine 13th position. I think it's just like there's this idea up and down the grid that they've got all the data and all the gaps, and they're just gonna game the heck out of it. But in reality, what they end up doing is just getting decision paralysis. And like, you have so much information that you know all the cons, but you tend to underestimate the pros. So you're like, okay, we don't want to pit now because we'll be in traffic, or we don't have that margin if we only do a 2-second pit, or we need a 2-second pit stop to come out where we need to come out, and we don't want to risk that. If we have a 3-second pit stop, then we're screwed. But it's like, well, go for it. Why do you train your pit crew? Like, today, McLaren could have won the race on a better pit stop. So imagine if they had pit on separate laps, and Max had a bad pit stop, and then Lando had his good pit stop 2 laps later, and he'd gained another second on the overcut. He wouldn't have needed very much. But when they both pit on the same lap, you're just, you're only gaining that couple of seconds, or that second that Max's extra pit stop gave you. So it's, they're just up and down the grid. There's too many people on the pit wall and back in the factory over gaming it. And there's not enough strategic variables that, unless there's a safety car that throws you into a split-second decision and is really highly dependent on where on the track you are when it's called, what options you have, and it just sort of throws a joker in the pack and away you go. Like, they've got everything gamed, and it almost feels like there's just no strategy anymore, unless something crazy happens.
The thing is, Marshall, to add to that, I think Pirelli has a role to play in this as well. Like, the tires are made of practically, like, they're indestructible. And they keep giving compounds that just don't degrade at all, which allow for these safe plays, which allow for the safe strategy calls and whatnot. We've been complaining about the tires being an issue for a long time now, and nothing has changed. It's come to a point where, I get it, you need to manufacture good rubber. You can manufacture good rubber. You have softer compounds. Use your softer compounds. Have tires that actually are going to have some degradation on it. Because if not, all the teams are just going to be running the exact same thing, exact same strategy. They're going to know everything in and out. When you have tires that are going to degrade more, that doesn't mean the tires are not safe. It just means your tire management is going to come into play more often. Your pit stop strategies are going to be even more important. But no, it just makes things drab and easier.
Here's what you do. You give them all just a random tire allocation, but you don't tell them which ones are which. You just randomly
it wouldn't make a difference. They're all the same anyway.
That's true. That's true.
I think there's actually another factor in this for McLaren. There is the equal driver preference with the drivers, because you saw today with Piastri, Lando. I think McLaren are in that mindset that they want to keep both drivers happy. Like, you can have that, but there is a point where I think this will affect them down the line, where if say they don't allow, if Piastri, like you saw, Piastri wants to overtake today, and McLaren to give him the same thing, saying, "Oh, that's Lando's pace," for example. It's going to get to the point where I think it's going to hamper their strategy decisions, because they don't want to upset the chemistry within the team. And there's also another factor, is we have to make a point that they have just snatched it was announced last year, but they've snatched Red Bull's chief strategist, who's been there for about 15 years, who's Will Courtney, who's currently on gardening leave, who will become their sporting director next year. So that's another. They've hired some key personnel in the strategy sphere in F1, but it's going, like I said, I just think the McLaren wants to keep their drivers happy, but you also need to do what's best for the performance on track as well. And I think they could have swapped. They could have done 2017 Hungary, where Mercedes basically they swapped the drivers and they swapped them back. So Piastri couldn't get past Max. They could have swapped them back, but it's I think they could. I would like them McLaren try and switch the drivers, but if they did, when Piastri wanted to switch the drivers at that point, I think it was too late anyway to switch them. And like I agree with both, but Marshall as well. I think like they should just pit. Why pit on the same lap as Max Verstappen?
And yeah, to the swap with Piastri, that was never on. And it was funny because Villeneuve said on the broadcast, like Crofty was like, "Will they switch them? You know, will they let Piastri have a go?" And Jacques was just like, "Well, if the standings end how the race is right now, that would lose Lando the championship lead. So there's absolutely zero chance they're doing that." And Crofty just shut right up. It's like, yeah, okay. There were a few times in this race where Crofty was trying to manufacture some excitement and Jacques just smacked it right down. And it was funny every time, or at least I thought it was.
Yeah, I mean, it was a strange situation because I mean, I had so many people after the race telling me, "Oh, Oscar had the pace to catch Max." I'm like, no, he didn't. Like he would not. He may have got a bit closer, but Max just. I mean, first of all, you're trying to overtake Max Verstappen, which you have to treat the rear of his car like the hind legs of a donkey. But then also, it's just there's no evidence at all that it would have worked. And then what if Oscar then doesn't give the place back? You open yourself up to so much potential headache. And I think McLaren in that situation probably did the right thing in not switching them. But I think what they should have done is they should have left either one of them out longer. If Oscar felt I've got the tire pace, tire advantage to make this work, then let me have a crack at it. And because he's that further back, you can probably take the risk with him. But they were saying on the comms that we're pitting him now to cover George Russell. Like, what? He's not even in your postcode. What are you doing? Just ridiculous. I couldn't believe that.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Is they manage to the conservative. They're never looking forward. They're always looking at who's behind them. It's bizarre.
It's like this race show that they just exclude the Max Verstappen out of the race and said we don't want Max doesn't exist. We're going to just focus on what's behind, and that's it. It's like the one rule at home in this modern era, everyone: don't rule out Max Verstappen at any point, or don't forget he's
there. Exactly. I mean, Shez, there is a template on how to win in a 2v1 situation, and a lot of people were saying, look at what Sebastian Vettel did in 2013 and the way that Red Bull managed that situation. So, I mean, could McLaren have been a bit more aggressive there, or?
Yeah, but it's a different situation, right? In 2013, Sebastian Vettel was Red Bull's primary driver, right? Like there was no doubt that was where their championship challenge was coming from. You don't have that here. I think the problem with this McLaren being conservative line of argument is that we are perhaps pointing the finger at McLaren, asking them to solve a problem, i.e. a boring race, for which they have no obligation to do that. And actually, the only thing that comes from them making the race more exciting for us is that one or other of their driver loses out. And that's fine if they've got a clear number one, number two, they've got somebody that's acting as a rear gunner. Fine. Don't bring in Oscar Piastri. Let him get undercut by George Russell. That was a potential actual risk at that point, because you don't know what the degradation was going to be like. And you don't know that suddenly on a new set of hards, Russell isn't going to bang out a couple of laps and suddenly your 2-3 is actually a 2-4. You don't know that that's going to happen, right? And then Oscar Piastri is going to be shouting down the radio going, what the heck are you guys doing? Like, why am I now in fourth? And
trying to win the race, though.
Yeah, but with Lando, he's like, what about me? Like, I also want to win the race, because ultimately, okay. So that is the problem, right? That's their problem, is that they have two drivers both gunning for a world championship, both with it's not like Lando qualified 0.3 ahead of Oscar Piastri on Saturday. It was barely a couple of hundredths. So to kind of say to Oscar, sorry, we know you're going to get undercut. We know that that's a big risk, but sod it, we're going to do it anyway, I think is a non-starter. And then the other side of the coin, okay, let's keep Lando out for a bit longer. Let's keep him out 2 or 3 laps longer. Max still gets ahead of you because he's essentially undercut himself ahead. But the tire offset, which you now know there isn't one, means that you're automatically behind Max Verstappen. So status quo, you haven't actually changed anything, but you've been out a couple of laps longer, and you've risked Oscar undercutting himself ahead of Lando, plus minus Charles Leclerc as well. And then you've gone from having a 2-3 to having a 2-4 again. So you either stay where you are or you lose
or
something.
a 1-3.
There's no way there was going to be a 1-3, Marshall. There's not a
Absolutely.
chance it was going to happen.
Yeah,
There
he
was
could have gone
Max,
faster.
who
He could have gone faster. Lando could have stayed out 2 laps longer.
Could have, but
and could have had clear air.
but there
and
was
we don't
but,
know.
but there was never
it.
any point in that race where Lando showed the kind of pace that said, "Yeah, I've got the legs on Max." There was never a point in that race
because
that
he wasn't
eventuality
allowed to
happened.
show it because he was always within the dirty air of Max's car. In
That
clear
dirty
air,
air,
he
mate,
would
that-
have had a much better chance.
Oscar Piastri in the same car as him got to within 0.3 of him, right? So this isn't about dirty air, and that was on 2 separate occasions. There was no degradation on those front tires, and that's what you're trying to preserve. That's what you're worried about in dirty air, but there was no degradation.
Aerodynamic car performance, like you're losing the downforce.
It didn't make any difference to Oscar Piastri, right? Like he couldn't get close enough to actually pass him, but he was demonstrably quicker than Lando.
Lando's not going to respond to a guy that he knows isn't allowed to pass him because of papaya rules.
Why do we know he's not allowed to pass him? Because I didn't hear anything on the radio that said that he wasn't.
Rules.
Papaya rules don't say you can't attack the other driver. They just say don't take each other out.
They say a lot of things. They say whatever Zach Brown wants to say.
Yeah, but at no point
I don't feel
Oscar
at any point in the McLaren relationship between these two that they've been allowed to fight ever once. So I just assume that they're holding position all the time because I've never seen any evidence that they've allowed to otherwise. It's always whoever qualifies first gets priority, and whoever gets ahead by any means,
I don't agree with that.
Get out of the way and let the other guy back.
That's how
they work. That's how they work.
That's not what it looked like to me.
But that's how they work since they've been a contending team. Is whoever qualifies ahead gets priority. If you find yourself in front by our error or by a strategic decision, then we're going to let you right back through because we don't want you fighting. And even in Australia, they called off the battle and then said, "Oh, you can fight, Oscar," when he'd already made a mistake. Like, they're not actually really fighting. And anybody who thinks that they're actually really fighting isn't paying attention to how they're actually behaving on the pit wall and how they're actually the reason that Oscar is up Lando's butt is to prove a point that I could be faster than him if you let me. And the reason Lando isn't doing anything to resist is because he knows the team has his back and that Oscar's not allowed to pass him. It's all just inter-team gamesmanship.
So what you're saying is when Oscar had DRS and potentially had a look up the inside or the outside into turn 1 or 2, he was going to back out of that.
Absolutely. 100%.
We're going to have to
100%. He was doing it for mere appearances. Mere appearances.
I think that's a little nonsense, mate. I think that's not true.
The one thing I will throw into this is if we're talking about teammates truly being allowed to race wheel to wheel, we have not seen Lando and Oscar going wheel to wheel the way we've seen others go wheel to wheel. We've
Monza
not
2024.
No, wait. For the number of times that they were competing and that they could have gone wheel to wheel, we have not seen enough of that with the McLarens. We've seen it with Ferrari between Charles and
Carlos.
Yikes, you've forgotten his name already.
We've also seen it in the past with Seb.
George and Hamilton.
Seen it with George and Lewis. We see it with
Nico and Lewis.
We've seen it with Nico and Lewis. We've seen it with Lewis and Valtteri. We've seen it across many other teams where if they've got a competitive car, they are allowed to go drive wheel to wheel. I do not see that same aggression when the two McLarens are fighting one another for track position. There's none of that wheel-to-wheel aggression that you see when, say, Oscar goes up against Max, when, say, Oscar goes up against Charles.
There's
None
going to
of
have
that
to
when
be
they're
a
fighting their
catalyst.
own teammates.
There's going to have to be a catalyst between these two guys that makes the gloves come off, and then it will get real. But until that happens, they're not actually racing each other.
I think if Max isn't there, I think they would have been allowed to race. Because if we think to Nico and Lewis, the reason they were allowed to race was because they were 30 seconds up the road.
No,
I
but
agree
at the
with
same
you.
time,
When they're
agree with
fighting
you.
for a
kinda
Constructors'
dumb, though.
Championship,
That's
they're probably thinking Constructors' Championship as well as drivers.
Or it
Yeah.
could be that they were on a track where it was impossible to overtake today. Yuki Tsunoda was sat in Pierre Gasly's DRS for how many laps? The entire first stint, and couldn't get past. It's this Oscar not getting past Lando isn't a
But you're-
absolute here we go convicted certainty that
you're
he
proving
wasn't
that-
allowed to go past him. It was just that he was unable to go past him.
Then you're
That's
proving
a
the point
characteristic
that if
of
McLaren wanted to win that race, they should have kept Lando out longer, because overcutting was the only chance they had to do so. The only possibility they had to win the race.
But at that point, at the point that you're talking about overcutting, they already knew that there was no tyre offset because they could already see what George has been doing in the background. There was no. I don't think there was any point in doing that unless you were happy to sacrifice a position or two to either Oscar or Charles or both. I don't see the point in doing that.
So,
But what we're arguing about here is whether or not we think Oscar, at the point that he had DRS, that he was chasing down Lando, that he got to within 3/10 of him, but couldn't quite get close enough to get past. We're saying that he wasn't allowed to go past him.
Yes.
That's where
Yes. 100%.
Yeah, that's where
100%.
Sure. I mean, saying 100% doesn't mean it's certainty. For me, it's 100% not true.
Okay,
Like in that race, there was no radio.
I don't know.
There was
Zach Brown.
It was on the radio, though.
There was a radio message from Oscar saying, "Can you let me past?" And they said no. That's not the same as don't attack Lando.
No, Shez, I'm sorry. I don't ever remember him getting a response to that.
Yeah.
I also remember Oscar saying, if this is his best pace, let me know because I feel that I can catch up to Max.
No,
and this was
no,
5 to 6
laps. Tom Stoller said to Piastri, "This is Lando's pace," and that was it. It wasn't
but then that's not answering his question. That's where I think Marsh and Shez, I'm not saying that you're wrong. I feel like you make a great point because in a way we should look at it. Well, where's the proof of this? We want concrete. But where Marsh is and where I'm turning into is we have enough body language to already think this way because it's what it's mostly been. And I'm just gonna say this one last point, and I think the conversation is great right now. If you look at Lando's dad, there was a point where they pinned to him. I don't know who was next to him. He literally covers his mouth and he turns to the right and he says something to him. And in my mind, if I want to play lip reading, it's okay. They're not gonna let him pass. And then I knew that's it. That was my thing. But
I think Shez, the argument that I would have is the fact that Oscar needed to ask to be let by tells me he's not allowed to fight anyway. Because why would you ask if you were just allowed to do
pass, because you cannot pass. That was the problem. He was killing his own tires trying to get past him. He tried twice already and wasn't able to do it. Nobody behind him was able to get past either. So he was asking, look, that guy's my teammate. I'm faster than him. And he even said in the post-race press conference, I had to try, didn't I? And that's what he did. He said, look, I can't pass because I can't pass. Let me have a go at Max. But it was correct not to swap them round because the same thing would have happened. He would have gone up against Max. He would have been 1.2, 1.3 seconds off him, never any closer. And then we would have had an entire debacle about, that's not how you say it, an entire debacle about how to swap them back round again. And it would have been a complete nightmare. So that's why they didn't swap them round. And I totally understand that. But that's not the same as saying Oscar, back the hell off. There was no sign of that anywhere. And a little bit of an under the hand comment from one dad to somebody sitting next to him is not proof positive in my eyes anyway, to say that that's what was said.
I think that what we can both agree on is that the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence of this like team order, right? We don't know what the team orders are, but I have not
but
seen.
we're just coming to it from
we're coming at it from two opposite presumptions. But have you seen these two ever be allowed to battle?
Monza 2024. Yes, Monza 2024.
What did they have to play for there?
They had a win to play for, and there was a title on the line for Lando.
Yeah,
Norris.
Lando was going for the drivers, and Oscar sent it up the inside, didn't he? And
so, and I know what Zach Brown said after that. What he had said, and this is why I'm happy to back my conviction that Oscar was allowed to fight, was after that race. He sat down with them and said, look, when we said you can race, what I didn't mean was on the first lap, go after each other. Once we're clear of everybody else, then you can go for your guns, do what the heck you want. Just don't do it when there's somebody literally behind us trying to poach a position. That wasn't the issue here. Like, if they fight, what's the worst that's going to happen? If they're 30 seconds up the road from everybody else, the worst thing that's going to happen is Max Verstappen gets a little bit further ahead of them. Fine. The absolute worst thing that can happen is that they crash out, but Papaya rules already covers that. Don't crash into each other. So all of your bases are already covered. And that's why, for me, in that situation, Oscar was ready to go for it. He wasn't able to get past. So he turned around and said, look, I'm quicker than him. I'm demonstrably quicker than him. Let me pass. To which the answer was absolutely correct. No, you cannot.
In this situation, I just say, why did Oscar Piastri sign a contract extension if he's not allowed to fight Lando Norris?
Exactly. Like, look, at the end of the day, right, Shez, I completely get where you're coming from, but they were not in any danger to lose P2, P3. They were not in danger to lose P2 and 3 at all. There was nothing to lose there. P2 and 3 would have been secured. If they had allowed the pass, he would have at least been able to chase Max down, and we could see what had happened then. Again, at the end of the day, this is not the fault of the drivers. This is the fault of the pit wall and the directions. It comes back down to the instructions.
It's not the fault of McLaren, man.
Right. Yeah, I look, for me,
race,
Suzuka with one DRS zone, and it is a nightmare to pass anyway. And I think if this was Bahrain, I think Oscar probably would pass, and I don't think McLaren would have held him off. I think in this situation, they looked at the track, they looked at the circumstances, and were like, "Is this really the best idea to let Oscar through?" And then, as both Shez and I said, if he doesn't get past Max, then how do you do a switch? Because then Lando's nose is all out of joint because they've screwed him over.
You have a Hungary 2024 situation over again with the.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah,
it's.
If you're going to point a finger, it's what Marshall, you said earlier. Was it you? I can't remember. I think it was you. Maybe it was AJ. But it's the fact that, like, in it, what you can't have, right? If you've got a rule set that doesn't allow fuel stops, you have to have something that differentiates pace at different situations in different parts of the race, and that was meant to be tires. But the problem with the last two races, and we know this happened in the last race as well, because Lewis Hamilton tried to pull off a two-stop and made no inroads on his fresh medium tyres against a bunch of old hard tyres. If you can't differentiate in performance terms between your compounds, and there's no difference in terms of the degradation between your different compounds, be they hard, medium, or soft, then you're just going to get a procession. So that's not McLaren's fault. They will be conservative because there's nothing to gain in terms of tire advantage, tire life advantage, compound soft, medium, hard advantage from doing the overcut or the undercut. They come out in the same place. This is on Pirelli and to some extent the circuits who are resurfacing their circuits. I'm not saying don't resurface your track, but But ultimately, Pirelli have to take some responsibility for the fact that in a formula where you cannot refuel, they're not creating a product that allows any form of racing. In a refueling era, it's fine. You can have that. You can have tires that will last the entire race, because they're going to come in and fuel for different amounts of stint, right? Different stint lengths. That's where you get your overtaking from. That's where you get some jeopardy in terms of position. If you don't have that, then you just don't have a race.
No, but the comment that we just had, that I fully agree with that. Fly, if you could have it up, yeah, get rid of the HUDs. Really need to fix something up, because this is just going to be another issue that we're going to keep talking about for the remaining 20 odd races, and we're going to get sick and tired of this.
So
something's got to give.
Yeah. So here's a crystallization of why the tires were crap in this race. Here's what happened. Lewis Hamilton starts on the hard tires, which everyone thought was a terrible idea. It passes Isaac Hadjar, which, by the way, was the only pass and change of position in the top 10 from the start of from the starting grid. But then he's running long and can't stay out as long as Kimi Antonelli on a set of mediums. And then when Lewis is on mediums trying to chase down Kimi on hard tires, he doesn't get anywhere. In fact, he goes backwards. Now, we'll talk more about Ferrari shortly, but that goes to show that the tires are a major issue right now, and Pirelli do need to sort their proverbial out, because
actually, I think if any manufacturer comes into this sport and takes up the tires, it'll be the same issue. I think under this rule set, how Formula's running the tires, it's going to be the same. Limited testing for tires, not putting the infrastructure in for Pirelli. Pirelli, yes, has the money and like that, but not giving Pirelli an actual test car when the teams have to modify and make mule cars out of their current cars to test cars. They're only given they're doing tire tests for next year's tires in practice sessions. It should be a full day of testing. I just think how they're trying as well. We have to remember that in this current set, I think before COVID, the teams could bring how much tires of each. It wasn't pre-designated how much tires you could have a weekend. It was you could teams could bring 3 sets of hards, 2 sets of mediums, and less bit of softs. But now everyone gets the same amount of tires. Yes, everyone's getting the same that, but I just think they're trying to control this and make it as standardized as possible. I just think you need to allow Pirelli to have more freedom, because we're going to have the spectrum where Pirelli will have these rock stone tires that can do I agree, the hard tires should not be able to do a full race stint, but also we don't want to have Pirelli having 2013 tires blowing up after 3 laps. I personally think if Bridgestone came in or whatever, I think it's going to be the same.
What would you guys say to having two manufacturers back again? Two tire manufacturers.
No, FOM won't allow that, because that's long gone.
Yeah, it's long gone, but that would add.
So it's the same problem. It's the same problem with just about every series in IndyCar or WEC or whatever. They always want, if there's ever been a tire split in sports car racing, it's all been all of one class is on one tire and all of another class is on another tire, because they don't want the direct comparison, because then you get into a spending war, and then you get into a performance war, and then you end up with tires exploding, and you end up with the 2005 United States Grand Prix, where you end up with
Shez, you're on mute, Shez, I think.
Yeah, no, I was just completely agreeing with Marshall on that one. The only reason Bridgestone versus Michelin worked is because Bridgestone just allied themselves to Ferrari, and the scraps were given to everybody else. So, basically Ferrari had their own personalized Michael Schumacher tires, and poor old everybody else, Williams, McLaren, Renault, etc., just had to, they were all pooling their resources, and it was never a fair fight. I agree with you, Marshall. I think that's what would happen.
But I'm still cheering for Thiago Montero, though.
Mate, and he had his moment in the sun thanks to Bridgestone, and it was all down to them. But ultimately, look, for me, Pirelli, Rory, I take all your points on board. Yes, it's difficult for everyone, but ultimately, Pirelli have had their chance. They've been here for 14 bloody years, right? And they started off with tires that were falling apart, and their excuse was this is what we were told to do. I don't think they ever had the skills to actually do anything else. And now they've got to the point where, right, we have to add a bit more strength to our tires because they're whacking more downforce on the car. So let's just make them super duper hard. And yeah, sure, get rid of the hard tire. I don't think the soft tire was particularly brilliant here anyway.
Went off after 10 laps because Stroll started on it and he was.
But I do agree that might have been quite an interesting race if that's all they'd had, right? It was the soft and the medium, or the soft and the hard even. God, can you imagine that? Why not give it to Bridgestone? See what they've got. They will have a bigger budget than Pirelli does, just because of their.
Well, Pirelli is going to MotoGP now, so they probably will X out of more series soon.
So
yeah,
in terms of that, right? Like, just to quickly circle back to what you were supporting Marshall on, Shez. This is again hypothetical and conceptual. Would it be that bad of an idea then if, let's say, we have a Bridgestone come in and look after F3 and F2 while Pirelli has F1 and look at how things go from that before a decision is made?
So you're going to take out any form of testing that Pirelli possibly has, even in the junior series, and let them do F1 only, where they can't test.
So essentially, there's 4 series. You have F1 Academy, you have F3, you have F2, and you have F1. So you split, each company gets 2, and you work it out from that.
I would say do it with F3 and F2 because their tires are not. The F2 tires are more comparable to the F1 tires in the sense that it's the F3 and definitely F1 Academy. They are nowhere compared to the F1 tires. So I can see that, but I think keep the junior series the same with the main supplier.
Okay. We could talk about tires all day, but we do need to talk about something else. We need to talk about Ferrari.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer every night.
That meme is just gonna keep on giving. Not a good performance from Ferrari today. I mean, I know Charles did well to get into P4. Lewis was P7, as I said, the only pass in the top 10. That's why he's the GOAT, right? Though it's not all bad for Ferrari, because in the real championship that matters, the pit stop championship, Ferrari went 3 from 3, undefeated so far this season, with the fastest pit stop once again, and it was on Hamilton's car as well.
Who would have thought that?
I know, right? Jonathan Wheatley leaves Red Bull, and it all goes to crap on the pit stops. But look, this is something that we had just to kind of pull the curtain back a little bit. We had a long chat about this in our group chat, and I just feel like Ferrari, even though we're only 3 races in, I am seeing signs of McLaren 2013 here, where they've gone for a big concept change and it has backfired massively. And it just so happens that you've gone for this big concept change when you've got the most eyes on you that you've had in years, because you've had Lewis Hamilton come to the team. Not only that, they've had double DQ in China, which then meant they had to ride their car higher at this Grand Prix. Lewis very open about that in his interviews yesterday. And then he talked about, we've discovered an issue on my car that isn't on Charles' car. And we've had it all 3 races. I mean, that is the most Ferrari thing I've ever heard. So let's first of all go to our Ferrari correspondent, AJ. I know you're slightly more optimistic, but oh boy, it's not been a good start.
No, it's not been a good start, but also at the same time, like I'm not gonna lose sleep over this, because if you look at where they're finishing, yes, they had a double DQ. The first race was shambolic. That was a strategy issue, sure. But apart from that, otherwise you're looking at both drivers still sticking within the top 7, top 8 sort of range. Charles still within the top 5, pushing for podiums. Lewis won a sprint. There is something in that car. It's not an all hopes are gone, all everything you can expect to happen, all things good, it's just dark and gloomy. No, it's not. It's not that. It's way, way too early in the season to call for that. Because this time last year, everyone was shouting, oh, it's a Red Bull dominant season. We're going to have the same thing as 2023. It's going to be boring. It's a runaway and whatever not. I called for patience then. I'm calling for patience now. Because it's, again, only 3 races into the season. Other teams are still understanding their cars. There are still upgrades to be brought. Situations and circumstances and solutions will be found to problems, right? Whether that means Ferrari goes on to perform the way we want them to perform, or at least I want them to perform, I don't know. But do I think we will see a Ferrari win, or at least a couple of Ferrari wins this year? I still think that's going to be possible. I still think there's going to be at least 2 Ferrari wins this year.
Mate, are you in charge of the Ferrari focus page that basically came out and said, I think Ferrari are going to win today on social media? Because Jesus, I want what they're having.
AJ, are you saying that Ferrari are going to just bring back the 2019 Ferrari engine for Monza and just say we're going to win this race, and we're not going to, no one's going to care because it's Ferrari?
I mean, me as well. Me as well at this point, right? Like, because the thing is, look, last year, McLaren was in shambles at the start of the season. Absolute shambles in the first 2 or 3 races this season. Oh, hi, Sheena.
We have a special guest on the stream today. A very good girl. She's a very good girl.
Yeah. But yeah, it's again, man, it's only 3 races into the season. If the performances persist when we hit Imola, when we hit Canada, if nothing improves, then I'll be like, yeah, okay, it's reason and cause to panic. Right now, it's the 3rd race into the season. I'm not going to lose sleep over it.
I mean, so here's my viewpoint on it. So I'm seeing the signs of McLaren 2013, but like, and I'm talking here as a Mercedes fan, like the issues I'm seeing with Ferrari last year are the exact same issues that I saw with Mercedes last year, where their performance window was narrow. Both drivers were doing different things with the setups to try and find some kind of performance, and inevitably it's Lewis that gets it wrong and the teammate who gets it right, so he's out qualified by about 3 tenths. And then they've got this issue with the ride height. Have they made a mistake in their calculations of the floor? And then, of course, Lewis has now got this damaged floor as well, which is affecting him. Winning a sprint race with a broken floor, by the way, not for everyone. That's a real trend we need to start. But like, strategically, they just don't seem to be there. Like, and it feels like Ferrari are basically trying to learn a new concept in the same way that Mercedes were trying to learn a new concept last year. And it just feels like this is not the time to be doing it, considering how close you were to winning a world championship last year. Like,
is there also an argument for I know Lewis is like, he's going with his own setup, but is there also an argument for Lewis to say in these last 2 races when he's gone off setup from Leclerc that especially he's learning a new car, would he not stick with Leclerc closer to Leclerc's setup? Because the last 2 races he has been up, like when he's gone off set from Leclerc, it hasn't been as performance as Charles has had. So I'm saying, like, is there can you make an argument for Hamilton saying that if this is happening in the last 2 races, I know it's a short period, but still when he's still learning the car, should he still stick? And he knows he has an issue, would he still see, does Charles' setup work in this situation?
Yeah, I think I agree. I think he should probably stick to Charles' setup, just because
that's what they did in China, though, and it worked for Charles and it didn't work for Lewis. They had essentially the same setup there, and it it gave you two different performances.
Yes, it did. I mean, Lewis said that he wasn't happy with the setup he had in the main Grand Prix. He said it took performance away from what he had in the sprint. And then obviously in between China and Japan, they clearly have found this issue on his floor, which might also explain why he's had to ride higher. And maybe he had a different ride height to Charles. I don't know.
Well,
I don't know the specifics of
he,
that. But
he has the same floor spec as Charles.
I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
they just had they were just jacking up the ride height so that they wouldn't get done for a titanium plate.
He does have the same spec, but there's an issue on his car that isn't affecting Charles. Like something has gone wrong on his floor, and he said that.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's funny how the color of the car has changed, but the narrative is the same.
I was just thinking
Thank
that.
you.
I was honestly
Yeah,
just
it's worrying.
thinking that.
It is worrying.
It's whatever way you turn it, there's going to be complaints saying that, oh, this is different, that's different. We've seen this narrative over the last 2 years when he was up against George. Like, look, he is what people also need to understand. He's moved to a completely new team after 12 years. It's going to take a while for him to get used to it, right? If you're talking about setups and all that, I'm sure he will take some onus and responsibility on those things because he also needs to clear setup and agree with things. People can push the narratives all they want, man. Like, at the end of the day, it takes a while for new drivers and new teams to get up to speed. Not for everyone, but for some. Maybe especially because this, like you said, they changed a whole bunch of things in the Ferrari. Maybe that's what's causing issues. Who knows? We don't know. We don't know what's going on in there. But again, it's too early to say anything, man. I stick by that. Come back after 5 or 6 races, and then we'll do a proper assessment of how things are between Charles and Lewis.
And then say we probably need another race or two before we're definitely sure. Yeah.
Hey. My stance has been the same. Give it time.
So,
it's too early.
You'll notice I'm not wearing red tinted glasses, and I picked Charles and Ferrari to win this year in my preseason prediction in our video. And I am totally running away from that prediction, kicking and screaming at myself. So, yeah, from the Ferrari hope train to the, oh my God, I made a terrible mistake side of the fence here. I thought that Ferrari was going to be better. Even if they get it back on the rails, I don't think that there's, they can compete for race wins maybe, but their championship's kind of in the toilet now. It's looking. It is, yeah.
No, dude. Again, we can't say that. How can we say that when we've seen literally 1 season ago? This
because
recency
McLaren
bias,
is so strong.
This recency bias is killing me.
And Max Verstappen exists. Max Verstappen exists. McLaren is really strong.
They existed last year. Didn't make a difference. It
but
was still
McLaren
got competitive and other teams caught up.
Max Verstappen was still a factor, even when he wasn't winning.
He was a factor last year. He was
That's
a
what I
factor
mean.
when McLaren had a shoddy start. McLaren were absolute butt wipes for the first part of the season.
Yeah, but
they went on
I don't
to
know.
win.
Not the
No,
drivers,
they
that's
weren't.
for sure.
They weren't that bad last year.
Bro, the first
Yeah,
2
I
races,
think
come
their
on.
only bad race was Bahrain,
No.
where they pitted 6 times in 2 laps or
Oh,
something.
yeah.
That was
Oh
it.
my God, this recent. Nah, I can't.
I'm just pointing out the facts.
It's not recency bias.
Yeah.
It's like
So,
a sample size.
I want to talk
3.
about the Bahrain Grand Prix next week. We could talk about Ferrari for hours, but we should talk about the Bahrain Grand Prix. Just quick fire to end the podcast.
Did we lose BaxtyB?
I think he froze.
Yeah, we may have just lost BaxtyB.
Yeah, I think he froze. Hold on.
All right. Well, we'll just do our quick fire round then.
Oh,
Yeah.
By the way, I do want to point out that I did take advice from our Ferrari friend here, AJ, who went with Yuki Tsunoda to win the race. I put Yuki in my fantasy team. You want to know how many points he got me?
10.
But Yuki is a standard Ferrari driver.
Well,
Just wait till the next
well,
race. You'll be fine.
Exactly.
Did you not get? Did
Shez,
you not
I
get
don't
10?
have until the next race. Damn it!
Did you not get 10 points for driver of the day?
I don't
No,
know.
I don't think my league is set up like that.
But
Okay.
It was Fly was the only one voting again and again and again.
Yep,
the
definitely.
best thing that somebody said, and it's on a show that I listened to, and it's like you just have to think of Red Bull as being a 1-car team and VCarb being a 3-car team, and then it all makes sense.
Jeez. Okay, here's what I think though. I do think Yuki will start scoring points.
I'm not taking no more advice from you, man. I'm not doing it anymore.
Hey, everyone laughed at me last year. I'm going to say this. Everyone laughed at me last year when I said Red Bull are not going to win. And Max Championship is going to be a close fight. Everyone laughed at me after the first 4 races, and look where we ended up.
Welcome back, BaxtyB. Welcome back.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. Excuse my language. My internet shit the bed quite spectacularly there for a few seconds. So,
just like Yuki's performance, I love it.
oh wow,
Hey,
okay.
just like Liam's performance, please. He should have.
Bro, he couldn't pass a Haas. Please, I don't want to talk about this.
Okay, quick defense of Liam Lawson. He had a
There's no
V-carb
defense
strategy.
for
They
Liam.
left him out way too long. They left him out way too long. He went longer than Kimi on the mediums. So, and just awful strategy. Right.
Sounds like
So,
a skill issue.
quick fire round to finish. Bahrain Grand Prix next week. I'm not going to be able to watch it because I'm going to be in Portugal sunning myself. It's going to be lovely. But favorite races, your favorite Bahrain. I think we might all say the same one because its anniversary is today. And then your pick for the winner of next week's Bahrain Grand Prix. I am going to go to Rory first.
I do a technicality one.
Go on then.
Sakir 2020. It was at Bahrain, just a different circuit, different layout.
It was at Bahrain. Fair. And your pick for the winner?
Let's go for Verstappen again, just for some chaos.
Okay. Fair enough. Shez.
Oh, mate, mine was definitely the 2010 Bahrain Grand Prix. Fernando Alonso winning.
Don't you dare!
Winning on debut for the Scuderia. Come on, why is that not everyone's favorite?
That's the
That race was more boring than today.
The first ever double podium in a long time for Ferrari. That one.
That's the only right answer there.
I actually did enjoy that race. I'm gonna stick with my pick. Winner, I'm gonna go for Oscar Piastri from second on the grid behind Lando Norris. Fights in for the lead and takes it.
Damn, papaya rules in this podcast as well. I see.
Yeah. AJ.
It's got to be 2010, but I can't. It was a Ferrari. It was a Ferrari win. How could I say no to that?
You could go 2022 when Charles won. You don't even like Alonso.
It's fine. Let it be.
Ferrari won 2 as well. Like it was.
Hey, I'm not about recency bias.
And also double Red Bull DNF.
I'm not about recency biases. In terms of race,
One use your points as well. It's like your points as well in that race.
I know,
That's true.
I know. In terms,
Go even further back, 2006, Felipe Massa won it, didn't he?
Did he? Was it Alonso? I think it was Alonso.
Was it Alonso?
Yeah.
We had Sebastian Vettel winning in what?
2012.
2012.
And for Ferrari, he won for Ferrari, didn't he?
Yeah.
17 and 18,
Yeah, and AJ, your mate Charles would have won it if Ferrari hadn't thrown a spanner in his engine.
I
in,
mean,
in 19.
what-
19,
what's
yeah,
new?
19.
What's new with Ferrari throwing spanners into the works of their drivers? It's a story. It's a tale as old as time. Can't run away from it. But in terms of race win, I've always been the one who gives the wild, crazy shouts, which you guys saw with Yuki. I can be biased and say Charles, but I think gonna go with George.
Nice.
Yeah, I've gladly said I'll take up the chaos role in predictions, man. So
Okay.
George for the win.
Fly, who have you got?
I have no idea how to follow that. I can't believe he picked my driver. Jesus Christ. I'm gonna go 2020 as well. Do not ask me why. I have my own personal agenda, and I think the Lion has reawoken. Max Verstappen.
Fair play. Marshall, who have you got? And favorite race?
So, I mean, secure, obviously, but if I can't pick that one because it's not technically the same track, I'm going to say the 2005 race because it was just like weird. Unreliability, sand in all the engines, everybody blowing up. Pedro De La Rosa in a McLaren scoring points on his debut. It was just a weird one. Kind of off the board. I know Alonso won it, but it was a Renault 1-2, but it didn't really look likely that it would be because it was, or actually, no, it was not. It was Toyota. That was Yarno was second in that one. But yeah, Toyota was way up there. Like I think Ralph was up there too. It was just a weird race, and I think like that was probably the top sort of Toyota moment in Formula One when it looked like they might actually, for a short, quiet second, be getting their shit together in Formula One
Marshall,
and looking like a contender. So yeah.
Do you mean it looked like Toyota looked like they were truly in it to win it?
They were truly in it to win it. Yeah. And then they didn't. And then they pulled out like a few years later. But yeah. It was a weird race, but I'm partial to 2005. I love that season because it's the single tire rule. So it's just all the races are bizarre. Definitely one of the underrated seasons. And I believe the race that year was like 42 degrees Celsius. So it was like everything was melting. There was sand in the engines and it was just kind of weird and chaotic. But as for what's going to happen this weekend, I don't think it's supposed to be that hot or anything. I think it's just a regular sort of 30-something, low 30s, regular hot sunny race. And the way George was talking about McLaren's pace advantage,
I was just about to bring that up, Marsh. Great point. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, he was like, yeah, in hot conditions, this McLaren's going to be a rocket ship, and that they're not as strong in cool conditions, which has probably been exaggerating their like how close Max can get. I'm going to put my money on Piastri. That's who I'm going to say is going to win. But, we'll see. That's why we watch, right? We never know what's going to happen. Anything can happen.
Apart from you, Marshall, because out of the six of us, you were the only one to get it right for this race. Four of us went for Oscar Piastri. And
yeah,
then,
I had strong indications of Verstappen because it's Suzuka, and he's kind of a Suzuka specialist.
Yeah, he's won four
somebody
times
went for a guy that finished 12th. So we went.
What's prediction looking like? So me, Shez have got one right anyway,
and Marshall, and so Rory and Shez got China right. Marshall's the only one to get Japan right, and then myself, AJ, and Fly are on 0 out of 2 because we didn't do any predictions for Australia.
I will probably end the season with 0.
No, dude, you'll end up picking like Gasly, and he'll end up doing a Monza 2020 or something.
You're gonna be the Cleveland Browns and just go 0 for the season.
No. He'll pick Charles for Monaco, and Charles will win Monaco. So
I technically am going to go for Ferrari in Italy and Monaco. So yeah.
No,
I think it's more likely he's going to say Sonoda at Monaco, and
Yeah.
Sonoda will then win in Canada.
oh God, help us.
He'll get replaced before the race by Hajar.
Yeah. So
Max,
my favourite race is 2014, which I thought a lot more of you were going to say, just because that Mercedes battle was unbelievable between Lewis and Nico, and also Matt Bishop just saving the world by putting that.
No,
By the way, on this day.
I thought you would say 2015 Bahrain, because it's because like it was back to the old dominance days of when Mercedes
2014 was dominance. They just
but
2015
wasn't when they just checked off and left Perez like in third place, and he was like gone. Like it was like they dropped him on the straight, and it was just like it was like 10 seconds up the road.
No, but we can't forget the 2014 battle. It was such, and it was kind of set the tone for what was going to come throughout the season as well. Because that was probably, I would say, the best year between those two in terms of the fights that they had. And my pick is Lando Norris. And on that bombshell, we're going to end today's pod. We have somehow found 120 minutes of talking, not 120 minutes, 80 minutes of talking, 1 hour, 20 minutes. My brain's fried. And yes, if you want to see more of us, then please do hit the subscribe button. If you've enjoyed this episode or you're watching on catch up, then please comment below, hit the like button, make sure that you do all the things that the algorithm liked. If you are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please do give us a 5-star rating. If you want to check out Rory, please check out Rory Talks Motorsport on Instagram and Rory Talks F1 on Twitter, Shezmed on the socials, and Tyre GP on YouTube. AJ, Shiver Me Yeeters and Wall of Perceptions on his socials, Fly Apex 63 on the socials, Marshall the Marshall Double Waved Yellow on Threads. You can find me, BaxtyB, on both X and Threads. Until next time, guys, stay safe, and we shall speak to you all very, very soon.